day, ladies and gentlemen. It is Thursday, April 4th, 2024. I'm here with Colin Padget. He's the CEO of Founders Metals, which, of course, my subscribers know and love quite a bit lately. Colin's a popular guy. Founders trades on the venture under symbol FDR, trades QB in the US under FDMIF. Founders is focused on the Antino project in Suriname, and this is a a project that saw work in the past. I mean, a lot of people thought it probably, well, a lot of people knew it had a lot of gold because there's significant, by significant I mean large mechanized artisanal workings. A lot of it done in the past by the vendor of the project, so it was no secret there was gold there. As Colin knows, a close friend of mine was actually the project manager for a past work as a previous company that did several years of work on Antino. He always thought this project would be a multi-million ounce project, though he admitted that his team just had trouble connecting the dots. I mean, they got lots of good gold intercepts. You get the occasional spectacular gold intercept, but just figuring out the real geometry of these zones and being able to chase them successfully really, Colin and his team and Founders are the first group that's been able to do that. That's what's differentiated Founders from anybody that's worked at Antino in the past, and it's the reason why Founders is up, whatever, 500 or 600% in the last year. They just keep delivering great high grade results, growing these zones and finding new discoveries. And on the back of that, really what I want Colin to talk about today, this will be a somewhat technical talk, is what do you and your team know that wasn't known before? Why are you guys having so much more success generating consistent results than past workers did? And what do you know now, and what does it tell you about the potential for scale in Antino? So Colin's going to walk us through some of the, they've done a lot of multidisciplinary work in the last year. It isn't just me drilling, maybe doing tons of other stuff. And he's got some great new members on the team, at least one of whom which is really good at doing maps based on this deck. So Colin now has the maps at his disposal to walk through the story, and that's what I'm going to ask him to do. So, please give us 10,000-foot view, but really I would like to hear a bit of the details. I mean, what do you guys know now, and what does it mean in terms of how you explore and grow this thing going forward?
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I think as we go through, just be a bit of a conversation, but the biggest things that have led to our success, have and differentiated us from the guys in the past have really been just some new techniques that hadn't been done or hadn't been tried. There was no LiDAR data previously on the property. That's been immensely helpful to understanding just the regional structure, and then tying that with the ground magnetics data and the IP data that we've collected, both at Upper Antino and at Buese as well. But at Upper Antino, it's really those things that have helped us understand the overall structural picture. And
Right.
I should qualify that too with the team thing is really important. A lot of the credit goes to Dr. Vincent Combs, sort of chief geologist, and he did his PhD on the Yao deposit here, which isn't too far away. So I think I can safely say that there's probably no one on the planet that knows the rocks in this neck of the woods better than that guy. So, and we're all of these maps that have been put together are his work. So he's the gets all the credit for that. Yeah, I kind of wanted to talk just about the structure, all of that, kind of what we understand, and starting kind of at the big scale. Because in geology, I mean, if you see it at one scale, you're going to see it, at all of them. And so the map we're looking at is regional scale. What you see here, you're going to see at the deposit scale, the outcrop scale, and even the microscope thin section scale. So the big thing to point out here is this big fold here with that northwest orientation to it. That northwest piece is a pretty common orientation for mineralization kind of throughout the Guyana Shield, and we're focusing specifically on the stuff here around French Guiana and Suriname. That's been a really important orientation for us. That's that 8-kilometer gold trend that we see in the historic auger samples. it's certainly the orientation of the main Froyo shear zone and a lot of those the stuff that we've hit in the step outs. It's an important orientation for sure. But there's also a number of these cross-cutting things or these later northeast things that have come to be very, very important to the highest grade mineralization. And we've interpreted them as being later brittle deformation that's basically led to remobilization of some of the gold from an earlier event, this northwest stuff, and that's where we get the reprecipitated or new deposition of gold, mobilized gold that gives you the really high grades and gives you those nice beautiful extensional veins with the gold vein that we had in a couple of press releases, and then a lot of the visible gold that we've seen to date at Upper Antino and at Donut have been within those extensional veins.
Okay.
We've probably covered a lot of the overall structure piece, but I mean, looking at it kind of in a zoomed in sense, this is our property. The outlines are just the two contiguous concessions, Antino 1 and Antino 2. This slide really shows the orientation of some of that later deformation, that what we're calling D4, or the fourth phase of deformation. And it's that orientation that's important for some of the deposits in the Bensdorp camp north of us. It's a big part of the historic mining as well. And then the Yao deposit over here certainly lines up with that also, a shear zone in that orientation. But at Antino we have this is our main shear, but we certainly are seeing that those cross-cutting structures are really important. I guess I didn't go through all the various geology pieces, but that's the big takeaway I think from this slide here.
Do you want to make just for shits and giggles? Do you want to make a short comment on Lawa, which is a new thing on the map? I mean, I know you guys haven't done much there yet, but it sounds like it'll be a coming attraction.
Yeah, for sure. So the Lawas here, or Lawa North, Lawa South, are some new things for us. We recently pulled some satellite data, free satellite data over the property, and saw these what are pretty new or relatively new pits kind of in the last couple of years. And Vincent and Pascal actually were out to investigate, and Vincent did a bit of mapping, kind of looking at what's around, and pretty interesting stuff out there. He described it as some of the most Yao looking material he's seen to date on the property, and there's certainly some scale there. I think they mapped about 2.7 kilometers worth of this tonalitic intrusive body that had those kind of silicified, sericitized, altered, disseminated pyrite kind of things. So
same host type as Yao, basically, which is
exactly
the 1.7 million ounce deposit you see near the top of the map there on the other side of the river and the border.
That's right. Yeah. So we we're obviously focused on Upper Antino and getting some drills or drill down to Buese, but we're still always trying to take a peek at what else is out there too, and with it popping up on a satellite image, it was hard to resist. So
they were unofficial guests, shall we say?
That's right.
Right.
And at this point, I mean the major any sort of like mechanized mining is wrapped up there for whatever reason, but Vincent seemed pretty impressed. So I'm looking forward to getting just probably initially some more guys back there on the ground mapping, maybe doing some auger sampling across there, and then hopefully some trenching if possible. Yeah. So, I mean, continuity, what you mentioned, kind of from the past work, that's been a question that comes up a lot. How do you know it's continuous, all of that, or what's continuity like? And I'd say like the keys to our success with the drilling that we've done, and a differentiator again from the past operators has really just been the scale of step outs too. Like we've taken our time with it, and that's been afforded. Well, the ability to do that is partly because we have our own drills, and so the cost of drilling is less. When we started this last year, after you get down there and started drilling in June, there's not a lot of money. So you'd be pretty conscious about what you drill. And had we decided to bring in a third party driller, I think we would have had to take a different strategy or different approach to the drilling that we did. Because we had cheaper meters, we were really able to kind of initially follow up, do some confirmation work on some of the high grade historic stuff at Froyo, but then after that we could take these kind of incremental step outs and just grow it from there. And doing that helped us understand it too, where historically there were a bit wider gaps, I think, between some of the drilling and even just the orientation of some things were not quite right. Stepped across it in a couple places, and I mean some of our best hits, certainly in this most recent drilling, as we moved northwest into Ginger and towards Eclair, they weren't very far off. Like they would have been, positioning's hard because you never know exactly where a historic collar is unless you can find the collar itself. But they wouldn't have been more than 15 or 20 meters off, I'd say, a couple of them. So, but that's just the nature of these systems. So, yeah. This slide, I wanted to just kind of show you what Vincent's put together, and how we understand some of the mineralization at Froyo. A big part of it is, I mean, everyone loves a big fold closure. We're interpreting this as basically on this end, northwest plunging axial trace on a big antiform. And so, what we see is that, mineralization or the shears, they're pretty much, axial planar along that orientation. And they're either coming up along the limbs or different lithological boundaries and then cutting through the limbs, or they're coming right up the center of that thing. So, those are obviously the first things that we're looking for. But it lines up really, really well with so many different pieces of evidence. Like, just zoom in so it's easier to see. But let's slide that over. It'll let me. There we go. Like, this is the IP data that we did at Upper Antino, and I mean the chargeability even has that a nice symmetry to it that lines up really, really well with the bedrock mapping, or the sampling.
Do you know where the nose is? I mean, is the nose eroded away, or is it something you're gonna snuggle up to as you go to the northwest? I mean, everybody loves a fold nose because you usually double your potential zone size, but I'm trying to get my head around how this is sitting. Like,
No,
is
for
the
sure.
nose to the northwest, or is it eroded away, or?
So it's there for sure, because it's got I'd say probably a 15 or 20 degree plunge to it to the northwest. But this M fold here in the IP actually does a good job of kind of telling you where you are in it, and so that winds up really being the hinge line basically of your fold. And then within these things, though, because there's been a lot of several different deformational events, but within these you're going to expect all the kind of parasitic things in there as well. So this is the big overall fold, but within that you're going to have smaller things. And one example that I actually quite like as a target is this right here, which I really wish we'd done a couple more lines, but you can see this low that kind of comes up through the center here, and so that's a pretty tight fold. That's about what you'd expect in this sort of terrain, where this is one limb, this is potentially a closure here and wraps around. Stuff like that is kind of what we're dealing with. We do get even kind of stronger charge situation right over the Froyo pit. That's associated with the sulfide mineralization that's there. Pyrite and pyrrhotite is what we see, mostly pyrrhotite. And but yeah, so there's a lot of opportunity for testing more of those noses. And one that I'm really keen on is this area right here, because you've got this nice northeast thing that's definitely tracking up through here, and is quite continuous. So a sizable structure. There's not really been any work done over there. It's kind of just they stopped, or historic work stopped just before it, kind of thing. So that's one that I think all of the guys on the team are pretty keen to test, as we kind of work our way that way. Eclair, for reference, Eclair would be sitting kind of right here, the historical Eclair pit.
And I know in between them, I know you can see some topography there, but I think on a recent phone call, you and I talked about this, and you mentioned that sort of between Froyo and Eclair, you just get a lot more loon shit on top of this. So odds are shallow auger work probably wouldn't tell you much of anything anyway. You're just gonna have to get some holes under it.
No, it's exactly, the case, and that happens. That's happened on more than one project in these areas where people do a big soil sampling campaign, and Duracrust doesn't do a great job of giving you the signature that you want, or that you're
Right.
looking for, and that's what we're dealing with, even on the runway area, where some of the historic auger stuff is, it's not great, but these big flat areas are pretty commonly Duracrust.
Right.
That's what's there. So that's also what much of this would be, so a volcanic unit, that's likely a volcanic unit anyway, that's altered to that. Yeah, so this is the bigger picture, I guess, for Upper Antino, with Donut sitting over here in this limb over here.
Right.
So we're looking into as well, and maybe getting some more lines done. It would be nice to have just a little bit more data there, but that's probably the case for every geophysics or geochemical survey that's ever been done and found something. So the other thing on this slide, this one's a little out of date. We've found quite a bit more since then, and Vincent is a conservative in his drawing as always, but yeah, this is kind of a bit of a sketch block of what we overall see as the Froyo shear before we hit the sub-parallel stuff out in the step-out drilling. We just had a couple of holes when this was done, and so conservatively and probably appropriately, he hadn't extended all of this out there. But in terms of Froyo and what we see, we do see these, like any of these orogenic gold or vein systems, things pinch and swell in places, and that's some of what that's when you're trying to understand the deposit. That's some of what you really need to figure out is how does that work? Is there any periodicity to the pinches and the swells, and what does that look like along strike and to depth as well? So I think we're starting to get a pretty good handle on it. It's helped hitting some of these broader, higher grade northeast oriented, I guess not northeast oriented, but the structures in a northeast orientation cutting through the main Froyo shear have certainly panned out and been kind of broader, higher grade intervals, and that's something we can target with the drill at this point, and have been able to do successfully. So I'll zoom back out here. This stuff here, I'm just walking you through, Eric.
Yeah.
What you're looking for, but this is, I'm not going to do as good a job explaining all of this as Vincent does, but so just right now, what we've put together is the structural model, or the stages of deformation. And so in ductile deformation, so deformation at depth, deeper down, we're looking at it's really kind of 3 and then 4 phases of deformation, but 3 within this ductile stage, where really you've got that first phase, which makes that nice foliation, and then compression in this direction. That's part of that big northwest oriented stuff. So all of that is really a precursor to where we get into the shearing and then this first deposition or gold deposition. This is the stuff that's associated with, it's typically fault fill veining. We get margins with sericite alteration. Tourmaline is very common with grade in these sorts of the veins that are associated with this sort of thing. You get quartz and quartz carbonate kind of mixed in terms of the veins themselves, all associated with this. And we would typically expect, or the guys, if they're kind of eyeballing it based on their familiarity now with the core and what grades, they would expect that kind of 0.5 gram to 4, 5, 6, 7 gram type material associated with the stuff that lines up with this phase of things. Where they get really excited is when you get into this D4 thing, and that's that brittle stage where we're interpreting as this kind of post shearing remobilization of the gold that was predominantly likely deposited in this event here. And then that remobilization has led to, our record right now is 435 grams per ton, but I'm hoping we hit 1,000 here at one point. Everybody wants one of those, but right. So some very fantastic high grade stuff. And this is really has tied together with the IP data.
Right.
And that's been, as we say, kind of one of the big things that's helped us target this. Again, these are a little bit dated. We've done a lot of drilling and hit a lot more at Froyo since this map, but the point of these here really is just to show the chargeability and resistivity, kind of what those, if you draw them as lineans, what they look like and what they line up with. And so, these flexures in the resistivity highs, and then in the chargeability highs, where you see those bends, it's definitely where we're seeing that remobilized, or at least more of those late brittle structures hosting the remobilized or free or just gold, visible gold, all that sort of thing.
The bends are stuff you want to target for high grade.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I noticed on the smaller map, there's a couple of good looking ones that I guess you haven't gotten to yet.
Yeah, some of these are mapped from a couple of historic hits further out.
Right.
Everything that's on these they're based on like data. As I said, it's pretty conservative with that stuff. These were him putting in kind of 3 different options as he saw it at that time, as 3 different potential models for where we see things. Right now, we've moved now, past this and into ginger. We've actually seen very little offset in terms of a fault. It does look like there could be something sinistral there, but it's on the scale of meters, and effectively as the plane goes, mineralization continues across it. That's where that 38 meters of 10.9 we put out was from. So shows the structures are there, but it doesn't move it a lot. It's just a lot of jostling. And that's kind of another observation here. Like you notice that these curves, they all give that kind of northeast orientation, and they're associated with folds in that direction. So that leads to kind of the bigger picture, which was pretty fun too. Actually, when it was first put together, was taking that idea from Froyo, that where we've got these flexures, especially in the high chargeability, where they intersect with some of these northeast things, they're pretty interesting targets. And we started putting them on a map, and this LiDAR data is pretty fantastic stuff. You can zoom in and you can see all of the detail as far as historic disturbance from mining, and then there's ortho photos that go with it. So sometimes you flip over and you see there's an excavator sitting right underneath or pretty close to one of these X's, and But a number of them do line up with where we already know there's mineralization. The upper Antino stuff, pretty obvious. Down here, we're into the big anomaly associated with lower Antino, lines up with some of these, and then Boise as well. And then there's been another 2 or 3 of them that have lined up with artisanal working underneath. So it gives us a few pretty exciting targets, and some of them that's aren't very far away. You know, we've not tested this. This would be a long strike of the donut stuff we've been hitting, and then this stuff out here, kind of at the end of the runway, is another one that's pretty close to home, I guess. But then getting down to lower Antino is certainly on our to-do list, especially with the scale of the auger anomaly there. But there's a bunch of them to follow up on. And so the guys over the course of the year here will get out and be doing some of that ground exploration work. But so I guess that's my upper Antino or large scale piece.
Yeah, so I mean, basically, there's new structural interpretation of geophysics. I mean, it's not only things are not, the drilling you've actually done. I mean, the new data is lining up with what you're seeing in the drill hole. So, in that sense, it's certainly working. But it's interesting how much new target this has generated. I mean, Antino had lots of target when you started work there last year, but it looks like it's got a hell of a lot more target now. So, you definitely got your work cut out for you here.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. But I mean, it's a good problem to have. I mean,
Yeah.
even this here, you know, what we're showing with the LiDAR, this is, it's only about a third of the property. So we do have some LiDAR survey coming up where we're going to fly the rest of the property to have that covered, just because it's been such a key piece of information. But yeah, being able to take it actually kind of going the other way from usual. Usually you're starting big scale and honing in on a target. We've effectively kind of learned that this relationship with the drilling and with what we see at Upper Antino or at Froyo, and then applied it at the bigger scale. And yeah, it lines up enough times with, you know, places where people have done some gold mining, or places where there's some pretty big anomalies that, you know, it's pretty convincing. I mean, the thing might not be directly under the X, but it gives you somewhere to go. Yeah.
So I don't know how much time you want to spend on IP, but maybe a little bit. But I know IP's been important, and I know it's something, again, like LiDAR and a couple of the other things. It's something that wasn't done before. I mean, it's data the old timers, if you will, didn't have.
Well, we can bump over and I can show you a bit of the mag for Upper Antino as well, if you'd like to look at that. Got some just some sections we put together from from the ground magnetics from an inversion of it's all total magnetic intensity for data. And the lines, basically, I just wanted to show a bit of these come all the way across to donut, and like to go through them and just kind of show you what things look like, in Froyo where we have drilled, and then what some other things we're pretty excited about are. Starting kind of with the furthest south, right in this is the first part of the donut hits, but you see what we're targeting within the mag inversion a lot more clearly with Froyo, and that's these boundaries, where we have these mag highs and where we see some of this topography within it, I guess. That's where we've had a lot of success.
Is it the sulfides that are giving you the mag highs? What do you think is generating them?
I mean, the pyrrhotite is going to have some effect on it, but I think a lot of this is kind of a mix of, there's some diorite in there that, from the mag sus work we've done that runs pretty high. There's some mixed volcanics where you get these kind of amphibolite, what we call amphibolite, but just amphibole rich subvolcanics, volcanic rocks. And then there's some basalt flows that are kind of mixed in as well. So that kind of volcanic or volcanoset package overall seems to be fairly magnetic.
And if you're playing along at home, we're looking to the northwest on this section. So Froyo is the stuff on your left.
structure.
donuts and stuff, and you're right. It looks like Froyo just seems to, and I don't know if this is just a function of how the processing gets done, but Froyo certainly seems to have a lot more, a lot more legs, a lot more depth to it than Donut does.
That's right. And I think some of it is that this unit we don't see at Donut.
Right.
So one of the things that we're working on right now, or it's getting it reprocessed, is basically the scaling for the colors are effectively done over the whole thing. And so there's definitely more resolution to be had on the Donut side, but some of it's being kind of overshadowed because of this, the highs over here.
Right.
So it's not that like that level of structure isn't as clear at Donut the way this is set up, but we
Right.
still do
Yeah.
see this kind of there's a boundary there,
Okay.
and that's where we come in or come through the intrusion and into a shear.
Right.
And a
And
shear
it
line.
may actually go, it may actually go deeper. It's just that it's a lower level anomaly. So the bigger, stronger one
That's right.
over it. Froy was just kind of swamping it, I guess,
Yeah,
in terms of the processing. Okay.
yeah. You do still get some of the lithologies. I mean, this is definitely me interpreting, and
Hmm.
you can't interpret too much too far down in these things.
Right.
Um, but certainly the first couple hundred meters, you'd be fairly confident in. But we come come out of the intrusion into some this quartz feldspar porphyritic rock, and then into the sedimentary rocks. And I think that some of these sorts of things, are some of that folding, that we were
Right.
talking about just earlier.
Okay.
Uh, so there's definitely a component there, but and the big break though that's quite interesting is the one in the middle. As a pretty obvious drill target, I suppose, and that actually lines up with Cupcake. Um, a little bit further. I'll just jump to the end, I guess. But coming through uh, well, we'll take a look at Cupcake on the last slide, or the last one. But this is that same area here, so there's definitely you know something coming through.
Yeah.
And they did some historic mining. Looking at the Froyo side again, blue holes are pending assays. This is kind of right into the most recent drilling that we've done.
Right.
That's at 38 meters at 10.9. So the stuff behind is pending and the one below. But that again kind of lines up with this mag low at the margin of this high. And there again, I think you can see if you squint hard enough, you can convince
Yeah.
yourself in the mag there might be a fold.
Yeah.
Um, but
Yeah.
all through it, with the IP work as well, it's all kind of lined up well with these margins. And when you can combine two different geophysical data sets and kind of come to the same conclusion and hit gold when you drill there, it's pretty strong evidence. That's the same thing at Donut, and it's a weaker signature. So we'll see what that looks like with a bit of reprocessing. The last line that we cut through here is to go through furthest north. This is the continuation of the Froyo stuff. We're pretty much right up into a Claire at this point.
Right.
That's that boundary right here. We start to come to the end of not too far away from the end of our survey. So there's definitely lots to continue drilling. These holes here are about 100 meters away from our last release. So that's another couple hundred meters on top of that to get to where this line is, and up into a Claire's where, well, some of the best historic mining for Upper Antino, from what they tell us, comes out of that area. So we're looking forward to some drill holes, and a lot of the historic stuff just wound up being either quite shallow or just off of things. But I am excited, or looking forward to drilling some of this Cupcake stuff. And these are, as far as the drilling goes, I think I'd call them wildcat holes. But that's this is the pit. It's the orientation of it historically, and it lines up awfully well with this stuff here. So yeah, looking forward to testing that. That's about all I, in terms of geophysics and things, technical stuff to go through that I had. Is there anything else that you wanted to?
Well, I mean, obviously, and again, this is kind of the story I've been harping on for a year now. I mean, you guys keep adding layers of data. It seems as you add these new layers of data, two things have been happening. One is you've been generating more targets, you've been generating stronger targets, but the different layers of data seem to line up and coalesce very nicely. And that, for me, that's always a really positive sign
Yeah.
when you add more and more data packages and they just strengthen the interpretation rather than going like, oh shit, where the hell did it go? It's over here, it's supposed to be over there. That doesn't seem what's happening to you guys. I mean, you're getting stronger, more coherent targets. Plus, you're getting plus you're getting a bunch of other targets that also look strong and coherent.
Yeah.
I suspect what a lot of shareholders would like to know is like, okay, you got all this shit to deal with, Colin. What's the game plan in terms of drilling and drills and stuff like that? I mean, what are you guys thinking in terms of how this project, how the drill program goes forward, and do you expand it? I mean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. And that's a question I get a few times. I mean, it's a lot of
Sure.
people can see like how easy it would be to get distracted with all of the various targets out there. And
Yeah.
so far we have stayed pretty focused, but I think the number of drills have kind of limited us as far as continuing the places that we're at. But um, I think when I look at Antino and what we've put together over the last year, I mean, we're at a stage now with founders and with Antino that we have a project. There's a project, and so now in terms of the best path forward, it really comes down to pace. How quickly can we execute on putting together the mineralization at Upper Antino, but also working on some of that stuff at Boise or the Lawas or wherever,
Yeah.
and that really means adding drills.
Right.
Plain and simple from an exploration standpoint, and it means growing the program. So our plan right now is to have at least one or two drills, and by mid-year here, added to the what we've got going on, and one of them kind of right out of the gate would be heading down to Boise because we've been promising to follow up on some stuff down there for quite a while. So yeah, Donut wound up catching our attention and delaying that, but it was a worthwhile delay.
So basically, 3 or 4 rigs, let's say 2 or 3 months out from now, give or
Yeah,
take.
that's
Okay.
right. And then we're looking right now at adding more rigs of the type we have, just for the kind of, it's a bit more efficient, have everything the
Right.
same, replacement parts are the same, all that sort of thing. You have to think about different stuff when you're doing the drilling as well. But I think towards the end of the year, then we'd be looking ideally for a fifth rig and something a bit beefier too, to target some deeper stuff, or to follow up on some of these things deeper down.
And the program is laid out now, is fully funded and then some. And I think even if you start adding rigs, I don't think you guys are in any hurry to do anything money wise, because I know you've been getting warrant money coming in, and there's a fair amount of there's a fair amount of outstanding warrants. I think everything dies like early next year, so I would think going forward you're going to see more guys just biting the bullet and exercising, because you've had some cash come in the last month and a half, right?
We have like January, February this year were effectively entirely funded by warrant exercises, and that was stuff just trickling in, I'd call it.
Right.
Last month, kind of around the PDAC, when gold first took off there, we had quite a bit exercise as well. So
Right.
we're down now, as far as there'd be about $5.5 million left of warrants to come in, most of
Right.
them in that 75 cent series. But you're right, it's March next year that everything
Right.
expires. So yeah, I expect to just see it continue to trickle in, and it has helped a lot, and it helps with us kind of pushing out that timeline for when we need to raise. And
I mean,
yeah,
it sounds like you probably haven't drawn down the bank account that much, because warrants have pretty much been replacing what you spend.
no, we actually, we've stayed pretty close to, we've raised the money there in November with the BMO led bought deal, and since then, I mean, that was 5.75 million that we raised, and we've got around 4.5, 4.7 million in cash right now. Yeah.
No worries that way.
No, so it's been great. I mean, you see it kind of offset, and um, yeah, with drilling costs the way they are, that amount of money winds up still representing quite a lot of yeah, a lot of runway.
All right, sorry to disappoint those who may be shorting in advance of a financing that isn't coming. Oh well.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's always a few shorts on there. Yeah,
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that covers everything. I mean, I realize this is fairly technical talk. It's one, it's one you might have to watch 2 or 3 times to kind of get your head around. But it's just, the big picture here is that all these new data sets are hanging together. They seem to, it looks like Founders has a good understanding of the fold and the deformation geometry, and that's really the key in these greenstone belts. I mean, you have to understand these are very old rocks that have been sliced and diced and folded and vaulted and moved around like crazy. You'll see similar sort of notations if you look at companies exploring in places like Red Lake, Canadian Shield, these multiple deformation events, which is did it swing this way, did it fold that way, did it fold this way, did it get sheared this way? Somebody's got to go through and figure all that stuff out to try to figure out, you know, where should this stuff be going, and which of these events is the most important when it comes to laying down the gold. And it looks like you guys are getting a good handle on that. I haven't met Vincent, but he's clearly a really, really sharp guy. He's really good at creating maps. I can certainly point out to half a dozen companies I'd love to have him make maps for. I'm sure he's got nothing but spare time and nothing to do based on all his work. But he's probably just sitting by the pool. But this is really impressive. I'm really pleased to see all these new maps and stuff. I mean, it's something. I mean, they've always been pretty good, but this is a really impressive update that I think will give people a really good handle. And one thing it's important to understand too. I know one thing people aren't necessarily shareholders, and some that have asked me about, and I'm sure you get it all the time, is what about scale? And I mean, I'd say a couple of things. One is when you look at Froyo, what these guys have been hitting, not just the original shear, but basically the parallel shear zone, if you will. I mean, take a look at some of those cross sections. Take a look at the thickness and the depth potential you've got. If you start thinking about that stuff in terms of pits, and I don't know what might be a pit and what might be bulk underground, but in a few of the updates I've done for subscribers, I've taken this hole or that hole and said, look, even if you add back all these zeros in between these zones and average the whole sucker out, you're getting a gram and a half, 2 grams top to bottom. You get that kind of stuff, even with the only 400 or 500 meters of strike length. The ounces start adding up, and this is one part of one target in one area of property that's got, I don't even know, 6, 8, 10 areas like this. So, yeah, it'll take time to drill it. I don't think shareholders will care because you keep delivering these great high grade intercepts, so people are happy to see more of those. But I wouldn't underestimate the ultimate ounce potential here. I think it's actually pretty large. And if you look at some of the more famous deposits in the region, there's a bunch of deposits that are 6, 8, 10 million ounces. That's not a weird thing
no,
in this greenstone belt. I mean or in the Canadian greenstone belt. That's the kind of scale you ultimately get, and I think Antino's got that kind of scale potential, which is you know why I chip away and add more, and I still own what I bought originally, and I'm a happy camper. And I think Colin's a happy camper too, and a popular guy. So, I mean,
absolutely.
I think that's this been a pretty long one. I mean, thanks for going through this detail. I mean, this is something I was looking forward to because the geometry gets complicated with this stuff. So it's nice to have you walk us through the whole thing. It's nice to hear that you're going to try to get to 3 or 4 rigs by mid-year and probably 1 or 2 more by the end of the year. It's nice to hear you don't have any immediate concerns whatsoever in terms of financing. I mean, this story's got all the parts. I don't know what to tell you guys. I mean, if you're not paying attention, I don't know what I do for subscribers other than phone their broker for them. This is one of those stories that's not obvious to me anyway. Um, Thanks again for coming by, Colin. You've been great from day one when it comes to being willing to do all these updates and walk through all this stuff for us.
Absolutely.
Um, I look forward to doing this again in a month or two, and you just keep those news releases with those big high grade intercepts coming. That's what you're there for, big fella.
There you go. We'll do our best.
Okay, Founders Metals, FDR on the venture, FDMIF, QB. If you're not paying attention to it, I don't know why not, and you better start. That's it. Thanks for now. See you later, folks.